The iconic city of Tokyo is the world's biggest city and the capital of the nation of Japan. With more people interested and visiting Japan these days, for many travelers, Tokyo is very likely the first stop and entry point to the land of the rising sun. When traveling to Tokyo by air from another country, very likely you'll land at one of either two airports serving the city: Narita Airport, located just north of the city in Chiba Prefecture, and the second being Haneda, the closest airport to the city center. While Narita Airport has been historically the main international gateway to Tokyo and Japan, in more recent years, Haneda, which happens to be the biggest and busiest airport of not just Tokyo but all of Japan, has increasingly become the preferred option for traveling to Tokyo for foreign visitors and business folks alike. Recently, more flight slots have been opened for international flights, though historically, Haneda has been the main hub for domestic flight operations of the major airlines of Japan, All Nippon Airways and Japan Airlines, along with serving as the main base for other smaller airlines in the country. It's for that reason, this video will highlight the history of Haneda Airport and how it became the hub of Japan. The story of Haneda Airport goes back to prior to World War II, as before the existence of Haneda Airport, there was historically another airfield serving as a military base, Tachikawa Airfield, that could be said was the main airport for the city in the decades prior to World War II. This would change in 1930, when the Japanese government purchased a 48-hectare area of reclaimed land in Tokyo Bay. Located in a town named Haneda, the new airfield was referred to as Haneda Hikojo, or in English, Haneda Airfield. Far from the modern facilities, with just a 300-meter runway, the first flight took off in 1931, initially with Japan Air Transport flights to Dalian, China. Looking to add more room at the airfield, the Japanese government would purchase the land next to the airport, which had a sports facility in 1939, increasing the size of the airfield to 73 hectares, and a second runway would be added. While starting off as a civilian airfield, Haneda Airfield would see its shift of use to become part of the Japanese military operations in the war effort for the training of naval pilots. Following the defeat of Japan in World War II, the Allied powers led by the United States took over in August 1945. Part of their plans was to expand the airfield, which would be converted to the Haneda Army Air Base. This expansion plan by the occupying Allied forces encountered a problem. 1. It was a residential area, and 2. There was a prominent Shinto shrine, the Anamori Inari Shrine. This didn't stop anything, as ahead of the formal signing of the surrender of Japan in World War II in September, the orders for the evictions of over 3,000 residents in 1,200 homes in the area came from none other than General Douglas MacArthur, who was tasked to oversee the occupation of post-World War II Japan. According to some sources, the residents of the area had just around 48 hours to leave the area, something that could have been seen as another loss of face following the Japanese defeat in World War II. This would result in the loss of the homes along with the Anamori Inari Shrine, though the story would not end for the shrine, as I will address it later in the video. Now with more space, the expansion of Haneda Army Air Base would proceed with 2 perpendicular runways. A control tower would be added, and several airlines would operate flights including Northwest, Pan American, British Overseas, and Canadian Pacific. The airfield would be operating under control, with the majority of the land given back to Japan in 1952, before the US fully handed over the rest of the control of the airfield in 1958, and once again, after more than a decade, Haneda Airfield would once again become under Japanese civil control. Now back in Japanese control, Haneda would be known as Tokyo International Airport, and before long, a new passenger terminal was completed in 1955, where Japan Airlines, JAL, and other airlines would use it as their main Tokyo base. While the international airport was open, there were restrictions on Japanese to travel abroad, and this changed in the 1960s and 1970s, more specifically in 1964, when the country lifted restrictions on outbound travel for its citizens, as Tokyo would become the host of the Summer Olympics that year. Expansion work was also done to accommodate larger aircraft such as the Boeing 747s, an aircraft that would play a major role in Japanese aviation, especially for both ANA and Japan Airlines. Then in 1970, a new international arrival terminal building was opened. Facing a boom in air travel domestically and also to and from Japan, the Japanese government considered further expanding Haneda, but realized they would need a second airport, and that second airport would be Narita Airport, which opened in 1978. International flights would be shifted from Haneda to Narita. However, the airport would continue to remain the main domestic air hub, though it did have some international flights to select Asian cities such as Seoul and Taipei, along with international charter flights. Between the 1970s and the 2000s, Haneda would undergo a constant transformation with varying updates to meet the ever-changing needs of the Japanese aviation demands. Among these updates include the third runway, which was opened in 1988, built on reclaimed land, and in 1993, the current Terminal 1, which is the home of Japan Airlines, was completed and then served as its main terminal building. This would continue into the 2000s when, in 2004, Terminal 2, which became home of ANA and subsidiaries, was opened. By the 2000s, the airport looked closely to what we see today, with 3 runways, including 2 parallel runways and a shorter perpendicular runway. Despite being a primary domestic airport, Haneda would become the world's busiest airport, handling around 60 million passengers annually. For 3 decades, Haneda was the hub of Japan. Though this would change in 2007 when the Japanese government reopened select number of flight slots for international air services to and from Haneda, thus ending the split of domestic operations at Haneda and international flights at Narita. To accommodate the new international flight services to and from Haneda, a new international terminal, later known as Terminal 3, would be opened in 2010 along with the 4th runway. As more flight slots became available for airlines, including foreign airlines, to operate flights to and from Haneda, Terminal 3 would later be expanded. Today, Haneda Airport continues to play its role as the hub of Japan, maintaining itself as the main base of All Nippon Airways and Japan Airlines along with their subsidiaries, along with most other Japanese-based airlines. While there are now international flights, it continues to be the main domestic hub in Japan, where airlines like ANA and Japan Airlines use wide-body jets frequently on domestic routes to connect to key cities such as Fukuoka, Osaka, and Sapporo, some of which do place among the busiest air routes in the world. At its peak, Haneda served nearly 90 million passengers per year and consistently has been among the world's busiest airports. Following the COVID-19 pandemic, Haneda is on the road to recovery, serving 78 million passengers, though in the fiscal year 2023, it did serve a record international passenger traffic number of around 19 million. As for the dual hub system of Tokyo, Historically, especially in the late 20th century, domestic and international flight operations were separated between domestic at Haneda and international at Narita. However, with both markets evolving, especially lately in Japan becoming a more popular tourist destination, both airports now cater to the needs of domestic, international, and transit travel within Japan or to other parts of Asia. Now travelers going to Tokyo have two options. The first is flying to and from Narita, which serves international flights, with growth sparked by budget carriers. While budget carriers has helped fuel the growth of Narita, the airport north of Tokyo continues to be a main transit hub for travel between Asia and North America. Meanwhile, Haneda is the more convenient choice for travel to and from Tokyo when it comes to international flights, and also for options to travel within Japan, connecting onto flights operated by airlines such as ANA and Japan Airlines. When it comes to the dual airport system of Tokyo, both airports does offer their pros and cons for travelers. For Narita, there are more options of budget airlines to choose from, and there are convenient flight schedules for international flight connections, making it a popular choice for travel between Asia and North America. As for the cons of Narita, it is further away from Tokyo with limited domestic flight operations. Most domestic flights operated to and from Narita are actually operated by budget carriers like Peach Aviation and Jetstar Japan. The history of Narita has been haunted by the past protests over expansion over land occupied by residents, leading to a flight operations curfew during the nighttime hours. Meanwhile, Haneda, as mentioned, it is located closer to Tokyo City Center with a wide array of domestic flight connections, along with 24/7 flight operations. However, for most international travelers, traveling to and from Haneda Airport is often more expensive compared to traveling to Narita due to limited flight slots for international flights, especially among the foreign airlines. Regarding the surrounding area, upon takeoff and landing, you are treated to views of Tokyo Bay, along with the city itself. Today, it's increasingly becoming more of the spot for the start of many exciting trips to Japan. And one of the sights for travelers that can be seen around the area, and I'll now get into the fate of the previously mentioned Anamori Inari Shrine, which was previously located in the area where Haneda now stands today. It has a dark history with the eviction of the residents and the shrine area itself, though there is somewhat of a happy ending for it. As for the backstory of the shrine, spiritually, the coastal areas where the airport is located had suffered from heavy waves damaging crops, and to protect the crop area, there were levees built. While levees were built, offerings were made at the shrine for protecting the area. So for the people, especially the residents of the Haneda area, it was not just after the defeat of Japan during World War II, it was also a huge spiritual loss. However, in a positive display of Japanese resilience, people from around Japan donated materials for a temporary shrine nearby before a permanent location was built. If you ever get to travel to or from Haneda Airport, you'll be able to visit that shrine today. Even though it was moved away, it is believed it protects the area, especially the airport itself, to this day. The story of the Anamori Inari Shrine doesn't really end there. According to a legend, an aspiring pilot trainee made an offering of fried tofu before his solo flight. With a good result, he went back to thank it, and since then, in addition to protecting Haneda, it's also considered an important shrine for Japanese aviation. Today, there is a version of the shrine at Terminal 1 at the airport, where travelers would often come and pay their respects and pray for safe travels. Like many airports in Asia, Haneda Airport has had its history linked to World War II, especially for the history of Japan and Tokyo. It's seen international flights come and go, though the constant of domestic flights has remained for most of its history. Over the decades, it has seen multiple terminals and runways built, updated, and closed, much like how we have seen Tokyo change and evolve to become the major metropolis that it is today. Amid the changes, Haneda has always served as the main base for Japanese carriers. While more international flights offer more travelers access to Tokyo city center via Haneda, it's a common starting place for ordinary Japanese travelers going across the country, whether it's a vacation in the southern island of sunny Okinawa, a ski trip during the winter in Sapporo, or to attend a business meeting in Osaka or Fukuoka before returning later in the evening. Haneda Airport continues to play its role as the hub of Japan. I definitely hope you enjoyed this video. If you like this video, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. This has been Flights in Asia. Thank you for watching and have a great day.